Good evening to anybody looking at this. This is 40 days um, Friday Night Delight session for November the 8th. This is session recorded, well, not recorded, logged lesson number 178. This is our fifth lesson on the seventh seals. We're going through the fourth seal. I did an intro already. Too bad for the recorded people. You are not going to get that intro. The fourth seal is available in Revelation 6, verses 7 and 8, which is on screen. You may read it at your leisure here. This is the last of the seal judgments to be called out by God's favored beings. This fourth living creature, especially favored beings by God. This blessed being calls out death, Hades, and a pale horse. Now, the one who calls out these three is the one who has wings like an eagle in flight. That's how it's described in Revelation, what is that, 4 or 5? Let's check it right now, y'all. Revelation 4, I believe. Yep, 4. Check it out. Around the throne were elders, and around the throne are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first like a lion, the second like an ox, third with the face of a man, the fourth like an eagle in flight. So this one must have had wings spread out. And while the description of these blessed creatures seems strange to us, they have 6 wings full of eyes all around, and day and night they never cease to say a wonderful passage that we must always remember. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. These beautiful creatures are cherished and valued by God. And they are the ones given the task to call out the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, we do have to check, and I haven't done this yet, but in the summary of the 4 horsemen, the first 4 seals, I will do a little check to see if there's any connection or parallel that we can draw, not parallel, a connection that we can draw between the 4 living creatures, the 4 horsemen, their effects, if there is anything that we could tie them together with, because it is not a coincidence that the first creature called the first horseman, second creature called the second horseman, and so on. There is no coincidence in the Bible. And I'll say that like a broken or stuck, like a stuck record, because you'll see me say it again later on in this session. Okay. This horse is stunning to John, just like the first and the third horses were. So let's pop back again for a second. I looked and behold a white horse, exclamation. He was stunned here. He was not stunned by the second horse, a bright red horse. There is no exclamation. There is no behold. There was a behold here and an exclamation for the first horse, none for the second. For the third, behold, a black horse, exclamation and behold, he was stunned for the third. And here again, of course, for the fourth horse, behold, a pale horse. So John was stunned by this one too. In each case, the first one, John was stunned because he didn't expect a horse to come popping out. In the third case, it was what it represented. Same here. This third horse represents something that stuns John when he sees it. Curiously, unlike the first 3 horses, this horse, his rider, does not have any tool. The first rider was carrying a bow. He had a bow. He had a tool. It's a weapon, still a tool. The second horse was given a great sword. He was given a tool. And this third horse, he came out, he had a pair of scales. Again, a tool, something to use. But this fourth horse and rider, no tool. That means something too. So work with me now. There's a lot here. The pale horse. I'm starting with the pallor. This horse is a pale horse. In the original Greek, it's the language says it's chloros. Chloros means yellowish pale. Now, I have up prepared for us some interlinear stuff, different translation stuff, and I want you to be aware this is, we're going to look at all of these things. Let's go to 8. This word here for pale is chloros. If y'all want to read the Greek, the X is CH. This is L. I'm learning these things, right? So CHLO, P is R. I have to remember that. I always forget that. P is ROS. And this O is a different pronunciation from this O. Okay, I'm still learning the differences in pronunciation, but this should be pronounced chloros, chloros, chloros. Okay, so Americans will say Clorox for the bleach. It's actually Clorox, not Clorox. I don't know if y'all could hear it when I say it, but it's Chloros. Chloros meaning pale. There's a point to me saying this. Let me just go back to where this page was originally. 463. Nah, it's 64. All right. So pale horse, chloros. Original word was chloros. Chloros, like I said, means yellowish pale, and its usage, according to Thayer's Greek lexicon, is clear. Its other uses in Revelation 8 and Revelation 9 was to describe grass and plants. So it would be logical to think the normal meaning of chloros is green or even pale green. But if Thayer's says it's yellow, pale yellow, no other concordance specifically spoke about this verse. Thayer's Greek lexicon did. So we have to assume, and we have to go with what they said, yellow, pale yellow. All right. Now, many people think it's just pale. Oh, it's a pale horse, meaning a pale, I don't know, pale like a gray or something. But that's not correct. Some would actually say it's green, but it's not a green like a grass green horse. It's not green like, what else is green? There's grass. I don't know what else is green, y'all, other than grass and trees and stuff. It's not a deep, rich green like that. This here is a pale greenish yellow. That's not me making up and adding pieces that are not there. It's a pale greenish yellow. Thayer's goes with that. We're going with that. In fact, Vincent Wood's studies agrees with the coloring, and they described it as the color of young grass or unripe wheat. Young grass meaning it's growing out and not fully green as yet. And that's for like temperate countries, not us in Trinidad. All our grass is always green, all right, except when it's like dry. Unripe wheat, of course, tells us the color as well. Albert Barnes agrees and includes the yellow in his description. So we have support. The greenish yellow is what it is. From Dr. MacArthur, he offered some assistance saying that chloros is associated with our words chlorophyll, grass is green because of chlorophyll, and chlorine. True bleach, chlorine bleach, true bleach is yellowish, a pale yellow in color. It's not white. And dying plants turn a pale yellow as well. God doesn't do things coincidentally. So this pale horse is a greenish yellow. I keep saying it wrong. Greenish yellow. It's that color for a reason, to indicate sickliness or fading. Okay, it indicates sickliness or fading. The rider of this horse is the only rider that is given a name. First, second, third horses are not given names for their riders. This one tells us clearly his rider is named Death. Hades is following him. Now I have to change the way I pronounce Hades. When we see stuff on TV talk about Hades, we see Hades, Hades. That's not how to pronounce it. It's actually pronounced Hades. So if you hear me saying Hades for the rest of this meeting, I'm finally learning to pronounce Hades correctly. But I've been raised, taught by TV media, and probably even people who could read this stuff. I thought it was Hades. It's not, it's Hades. Now, just like we identified when we studied the first horseman, this death is not a person. He's a rider of the horse, but he's not an actual person. It's a concept. The concept of death is riding out across the earth. This is allegorical. This is very symbolic. It's a vision. It's not reality. It's not literal. There'll be literal death. The result is literal, but what we see is going to be symbolic. Now, my first thought when I saw this was, I thought it was the angel of death. Now, I am sure you guys have heard the angel of death. Whether you went to church or not, you must have heard of the angel of death. So I thought it was like the angel of death who went through Egypt to kill all the firstborn. Guess what? In Exodus 12, which is where it is described, there is no such angel. I all this time was going through my whole life with a wrong concept. 10th plague, check it out here. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. Watch this, not who died, who struck them down. The Lord struck down. Exodus is a historical book. Its word is literal. There was no angel of death. That's something that people made up, I guess, so it would be a little more believable. They don't want to believe God will kill people. Now, I was dead wrong at my first thing. God himself was the one to do the killing. Now, whether God used natural means and all these things fell dead by sickness, or all these things, sorry, we have people joining. Welcome to my parents who just came in. Welcome and good evening to you. So we're doing the fourth seal in Revelation 6, and we're discussing the death. All right. So whether God killed the firstborn in Egypt himself, or he used natural means, like, everything just died, or he just commanded them to die, we see here there is no angel of death, like what you will hear about in, I guess, mythology. It's not even real, right? There's no angel of death. Angels did strike down people. Angels would strike down people at God's command, of course. But here, the Lord struck down all the firstborn. So just like that, this fourth angel, the rider is not an angel of death. I need to make that clear. So the original statement here stands that the riders of all four horses are concepts. They are not actual people. They are not angels. The concept of death. Death is going to spread across the world. Death is coming. The Greek word for death here is thanatos. Let's go back to the interlinear. Thanatos, you can tell it when you see a theta sign. Oh, I keep coming back to the wrong passage. And I can't see the screen, right? So forgive me. This is 6.5. Who is it? 6.8, right. So the Greek word for death is thanatos. Here it is. Thanatos. I know you all can't read it, but you can read the transliteration. Thanatos. There's a point to this. I'm not showing you this just to show you, hey, I can find a web page. No, there's a point to this. It'll come in later, more so, but it's now. Right now, this thanatos is nominative, masculine, singular, noun. Yes, even that counts. Check it down here. Noun, Nominative, masculine, singular. I can't point at it because my pointer will move the can I use my zoom pointer? Ugh, I can't. Sorry. So if I put my pointer on the N-NMS, you can see the parts of speech involved in thanatos. Nominative, masculine, singular. The concept of death here is personified, and it will be actively carried out. Death will be actively carried out as part of God's plan, as if it's some person doing it, but it's not an actual being. I need to say this. To be clear about this, the rider is not Satan. Satan has no power over death. Nor can Satan cause death on his own. God will allow him to bring people to death. God will allow him to influence people to cause other people's deaths. But Satan has no power over death. None. None. In case you were wondering, Satan has no power over death. I have to say this because people out there would think Satan is doing all this bad stuff and people dying. It's all Satan's fault. Nope. Satan might think he's in charge. People might think he's causing it. It's allowed by God. This is like a child holding a steering wheel sitting in the lap of his parent. The child will be, rotating the wheel and turning the wheel, but he has no real control. At any moment that he's going, the parent could just, okay, nope, we're turning this way instead. Satan is allowed to do certain things as part of God's perfect plan. Praise his name. Now let's jump into something that's serious. As you can see in verses 7 and 8, the rider's name is death. My subheading for this section is the word on, O-N. The word on is a problem. Here's what I mean. The transliterated piece of this here, and the one sitting on it. All right, so I looked and behold a horse, a pale horse, and the one sitting on it. So the transliterated version says there's a pale horse and the one sitting on it. The name of him was death. That's the transliterated. Literally, what the original Greek would mean in equivalent English. Hold on, stay with me. I'll give you a chance to catch up if you're feeling lost. We have here, I looked, behold a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death. I'm going to show you some different translations of this verse. I want you to focus on the early part. All right, ride with me. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider's name was Death. Stop right there. That's all I want you to look at. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider's name was Death. New Living Translation. I looked up and saw a horse whose color was pale green, more accurate. Its rider was named Death. Pretty much the same thing, except this one tells us the green, not just pale. We already established it's greenish yellow. We did the English Standard. I want to go to King James. There's a reason we're going to King James now. I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. It sounds different now. If we look at King James, I'll give you a chance to compare King James and ESV in a sec. New King James. I'll do one more translation after this. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death. Okay, a little easier to read than the regular King James. New King James are a little bit easier. I want to show you something. There's a point to this. Ride with me. We're going to Young's Literal, usually the hardest one to read. Young's Literal. And I saw, and lo means behold. a pale horse, and he who is sitting upon him, his name is Death. I'm going to put these three translations up for us to compare. Just for a second, we're going to do some work tonight. Ride with me on this because this is important, okay? So this here will be, I need to stretch this. This here will be Young's literal translation, right? This is usually the hardest one to read as far as I'm concerned, but it's a really good translation. It's a go-to translation. All right, so we have Young's literal. I'll put the King James Version next. All right, so just let me copy the King James Version. King James Version. And for comparison, I will put the one we usually use. I want to switch to NLT from next year, but for now, we'll go back with the ESV. So let me just copy ESV. No, I don't want all that. Right. And we're going to ESV now. There. So take a look at this, guys. Look at your screens. Please indulge me for a second. Look at your screens. If you had to see these three, give me some feedback, please. If you had to read these three, which one would you pick if you had a choice while you were reading the Bible? Which one looks easiest to understand? I know it's obvious, but I want you to say it. Check it out and tell me. Everybody should have been able to read it there. Throw in your feedback now. Guys, any of you want to answer, just share an answer, please. Which do you think is the easiest one to read? YLT, KJV, or ESV? Which is the easiest one of the lot to read? Feel free to answer, anybody.
ESV.
Yeah, the ESV seems easiest, right?
ESV.
Yeah, the ESV seems easiest. Now, hold on. We miss a lot in the ESV. And the reason I show the other two is this word here, on. On and upon. This is a big, big word here. And I have a reason why. I'm not making stuff up, y'all. I would not have noticed this. Okay? So ESV is the easiest one for our minds to read.
That's right.
Okay? But this is a very good example of why we should not trust one translation alone. I will recommend to people when they have to read the Bible, yeah, read the ESV. It's easy to read. But if you're studying the Bible, you need to study different translations. And I was led to the different translations because of one tiny comment in the commentary page. Okay? Bible study is way more powerful for building your relationship with God than Bible reading ever will be. We need to study the Word. We could miss something very easily if we don't do the work thoroughly. All right? Now, I would have missed this too if Cambridge didn't mention some guy named Alford. Alford, who has his own commentary. And when I checked his commentary, I didn't find it, what I'm showing you all here. Pulpit mentioned this briefly, and I would have missed that completely. So thank God for Cambridge What is Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges? The ESV doesn't have the word on, as you can see on screen. You see the KJV, his name that sat on him was death. This here, if you talk to me like this, I will get angry. Because his and him, masculine pronoun, which or who is his referring to, and who is him referring to. And in this case, it's two different people. His name is referring to death, the rider. Sat on him, the horse. So speaking like this in the KJV, it's unclear. If there's one thing I like when people speak to me is specificity. If you are not specific, I'd rather you don't speak to me because it is annoying to me. I think it's like disrespectful if you are not specific when you are talking. And I know some people be like, well, you want too much. I want to talk how I want. That's cool. But it's disrespectful if you don't take the time to explain yourself clearly when speaking to a person. It's almost as if you're throwing words out and you hope people could pick up the pieces. Let's be specific. Now, this is KJV. They spoke like this. They would have understood this in their brains. Easy. Not us today. So his name that sat on him, very confusing. All right. My 2024 brain would not be able to read this properly. But when I do read it and I take my time, I'll understand, the guy sitting on the horse is called death. That's what this means. And ESV says it so plainly. Its rider's name was death. This is a much easier way to say it. I'm not done. I'm just building up a story, building up a point here. So I would have read this if I read KJV. You would be like, oh, well, KJV here is just a long, old style way of saying what this ESV is saying. So I would just think it's not important to read the KJV because it's saying the same thing in a difficult way. Why bother? I'll take the modern way and go strong. However, Cambridge said that Alford pointed out a difference that is valuable in verses 2, 4, 5, and 8. Verses 2, 4, 5, and 8. The text is almost the same in all English translations. Let's go back to the English translations. Verses 2, 4, 5, and 8. Watch this with me now, okay? Verse 2. As I showed you before, a white horse and its rider had a bow. Verse 4. A horse bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace. Verse 5. A black horse. Its rider had a pair of scales. And well, of course, we know verse 8. A pale horse, its rider's name was Death. Let's go to KJV for a second. I'm showing you that the English translations for all of these, not authorized King James, all these English translations pretty much look the same in the way they describe first, second, third, fourth rider. I'm showing you this here. Verse 2. He that sat on him had a bow. Him that sat thereon. He that sat on him that sat thereon. Similar, pretty much the rider. He that sat on him, referring to the rider. And verse 8, as we saw, his name that sat on him. All the English translations made it look like a rider sitting on a horse, a rider sitting on a horse, a rider sitting on a horse. But in the original language, it's different. This is why we're here. We're going to Revelation 6, verse 2. Watch it now. And the one sitting on it. I'm focusing on one Greek word, the word on. Back to the word on. This here, EP, ep. Okay? For verse 2, the word for sitting on it, sitting on the horse, is ep. That's verse 2.
So
Yep.
why the advertising a piece of pork underneath? Just
I didn't even notice that. Thank you very much. Go away. Right. Check it again. Sitting on it. This is verse 4, right? Verse 4, the bright red horse. Ep. Same as verse 2. Ep. We're going again. Verse 5. Where is it? A black horse and the one sitting on it. Ep. 3 times we see ep. Ep, ep, ep. Verse 2, 4. Verse 2, 4, and this is supposed to be 5. Yeah, this is verse 5. Revelation 6, 5, right? Let's go to verse 8 now. This here is Revelation 6, 8. Where is it? Oh, here it is. And the one sitting on it, but this is not ep. This is a pano. What? How come this is not ep? Well, this is ep, epano. It could be the same thing. They just stretch it out. The Bible does not do anything by coincidence. So while all the translations looked at the 4 horses and said, rider sat on, its rider, its rider, its rider, for many translations. He who sat on it, him that sat on it. The English made it look exactly the same. The original Greek, it's epano. The 4th horse, rider sitting on it, there is a difference in just the way he's sitting on it. That's what I'm trying to get at. There is a difference. It's not by coincidence. It's not a light thing that you could just skip over. It's important, at least for the meaning. This is why we do Bible study. Now let me get to the actual meaning. The original, the root word for ep is epi. The root for this epano, it's its own root. All right. So if I click epano, you will go straight to epano. All right. Epano, right? And we're going, it's related to epi. Don't get me wrong. It is related, but the meaning is different. Epano's meaning is different, right? I just showed you epano. And let's go to 6:5, Revelation 6:5. And we're going to ep. Where is ep? I lost ep. Behold, a black horse sitting on it, right? Ep. All right. All right. If we try to get to ep, these things are not linking us, but ep is epi. For some reason, the link is broken on all these pages for ep. 1909, the word is epi. Clearly, epi, not epano. Epi is used to mean, as you can even see on this page, on, to, against, on the basis of, and at. In Revelation 6, 2, 4, and 5, this word is used to mean metaphorically on. A metaphoric rider is sitting on a metaphorical horse, and he is metaphorically riding this horse. It's symbolic. It's not an actual rider sitting on an actual horse. Okay, that's the main thing. Both of them are similar. Epi and epano, same thing for there. Now, there is a use for this word later in Revelation 6:8. So if I go to 6:8 again, you will see epi in this thing. When we see authority over a fourth of the earth, or authority over a fourth, yeah. So he has authority over the fourth of the earth. And over here is epi. So epi is used in 6-8. It's just not used for the rider sitting on the horse. Again, you'll see this makes a difference. The other word that was used for on, ipano, means on top of, superior, over and above. It is clearly different from epi, even though they're similar, it's different. It's not used, ipano, could have been used if all the words that mean on are the same, you could have used them interchangeably. So you might have seen the first horse epi, second horse ipano, third horse epi, they'd alternate or something like that. You might have even seen ipano here, and you'd see ipano down here, authority on the earth or authority over a quarter of the earth. But it's not. God doesn't do things by coincidence or by chance. Everything has a purpose. Okay? So epi being used for the first three riders doesn't mean the same as ipano being used for this fourth horse rider. Okay? What does it mean for us? The white horse rider receives a crown. So as he moves, he is given or handed control over the conquered lands. That's the white horse and the rider. A crown was given to him. The red horse rider was permitted, right? Power was given to him. He was permitted to bring strife and war. And this rider receives a sword. He was given a sword. And we're told he's given a sword after we're told he was given power to take peace. Again, I showed you all how that means something back when we did the red horse study. The black horse rider held the scales and caused shortage-related inflation. This yellowish, greenish, pale, this green, yellowish, pale horse rider is specifically ipano. He is superior to his horse. He's not just sitting on his horse and riding. He is on, above, superior to his horse. The riders are supposed to be in control of their horses at all times. Even in natural world, if you ride a horse, you should be in control of your horse. This fourth rider has more control, and he has more control over his horse because of the use of the word ipano. He has more control and autonomy over what he is charged to do. While this rider is not a person, again, it seems that the death that he's going to bring is going to be an authoritative one. And therefore, it may be more selective as opposed to widespread and random. You see, there'll be widespread and universally felt conquest, war, strife, shortage, inflation because of the first three horses. This death is likely to be more special. This death will be carefully controlled, not randomly assigned. I believe the process will be selective. It'll be, yes, a lot of death, a quarter of people are going to die, but it won't just be a random quarter. I am speculating on my own here, I know, but I believe I have sufficient grounds to do so. Let me give you reasons why. The words epi and ipano are different. That's not by chance. Epi was used for the first three horses, so clearly the fourth horse is different because they use ipano. It's something different. Nothing in the Bible is by coincidence. Ipano's implicit superiority, it means superiority, it implies superiority, leads me to think that this rider has more control over his task. The rider is given authority, unlike the others. The others were given like permission and so on. This rider was given the second rider was given permission. You see it here. Second seal, power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace, given to him. All right. Unlike our friend here, the fourth, the one who sat on him was death. It wasn't like he was given power of death. The one who sat on him, death itself, is on it. This rider clearly has special authority. The specific result that he's going to kill a quarter of the earth, that specific result matters. Nothing else gave a specific number of people or quantity of people to suffer. This quarter will be carefully selected for death, and there's nothing that anybody can do to stop it. All this because the word for on was different. I am harping on this to emphasize to you, study of the word is important. Now, while Alford, who his work led me to identify all of this, Alford disagreed with me because he thought the use of a pano meant that the rider was sitting clumsily on his horse. I still go with my version, though. I genuinely believe that's what it means. Now, back to our main work, Hades. Then his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Hell, the original Greek, would have been Hades, which we see translated as Hades. Check it out. In the New International Version, its rider was named Death, and Hades was following closely behind him. The pronunciation of Hades in Greek is Hades. So we should say Hades because that's the original word. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed close behind. Hades is given in the referenced interlinear page that I showed you. And the meaning of Hades is realm of the dead, infernal region, dark and dismal place, the very depths of the earth, and the common receptacle for disembodied spirits. In this verse, Thayer's Greek lexicon literally says that something we already know. Thayer said, Hades here is a power personified. That's encouraging when I saw it because we know on our own, we deduced that death and all the riders were concepts, not actual people, not angels, not the devil, not Jesus, none of them. Pulpit offered that Hades or Hades is a complement to death as he rides out. In doing some quick research on Hades, I went to God Questions and they share that Hades and Sheol are the same thing in two different languages. Hades, Hades for Greek, Sheol for Hebrew. In those places, in this place, it should be not in these places, in these places. In this place, Hades, the dead will find rest and peace and joy with God, or suffering as they await final judgment before they're sent to the lake of fire. Two sets of people will be in the same place, but they'll be experiencing very different situations. We note that in Revelation 1:18, Jesus said, and this is Jesus saying to John, and the living one, fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. Jesus is talking. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of death and Hades. Jesus is in control of death and Hades. Death and Hades are not operating on their own. They have a mandate. Death and Hades have a mandate because Jesus, figuratively and colloquially, Jesus owns them. Revelation 20:13 and 14 talks about death and Hades in a metaphorical way again. 13 and 14 down here. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged and so on. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. This pair of verses shows us that these two things, death and Hades, they remain personified in biblical, symbolic, prophetic language. They remain personified until the end of the earth when they are finally destroyed. There'll be no more death. There'll be no more waiting for judgment after they are thrown into the lake of fire. Let's look at the timing of this for 1 second because we've done this. I just want to review this quickly. The second death that we see here, second death, This happens after Jesus returns to set up and run his millennial kingdom, and the devil is released from the abyss. Remember, he's going to be chained in the abyss. He's going to be released at the end of 1,000 years. I believe that's a literal 1,000. The devil will be released. He's going to fool some nations for the last time, and then the devil is going to be thrown in. Okay? We see that fire came down, consumed them, and the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and false prophet woo, and they'll be tormented day and night forever and ever. So at the start of the millennial kingdom, the beast, the Antichrist, and the false prophet, they'll be thrown in the lake of fire. Satan will be thrown into the abyss, different place. After the 1,000 years, Satan will be released. He'll fool nations, and then he'll be thrown into the lake of fire. Just the timing here. So will death and Hades at that point. There'll be no more death in God's kingdom that will last forever after the millennial kingdom, in a new heaven and a new earth. Just in case you're wondering, the very next chapter starts, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and earth passed away. So there's going to be a new heaven and earth. We're not talking about that. Let's continue. Let's go back to Revelation 6. I hope I'm not overwhelming you all. This is plenty, and I did most of this today, but it is like easy to follow. You can ask questions after. Take note if you have questions. Take note, type them in the chat if you want. We'll get to them after. King James. I want to go back to our ESV. So here we see he's given authority over a fourth of the earth, 1/4 of the earth. Now this quarter is clear. It may be an approximation, not an exact 25% exact, but it is clear that a large part of the world's population will die. Why is this death so special? Consider that the previous horseman's actions would have caused death too. So why is this one even a thing? I would wonder that. Let's be real. Do we need a fourth horseman? Now, the truth is, the answer obviously is yes. The Bible is not haphazard like my writing or like other people's writings. The Bible is written by God. So there is a reason for this horse and rider. There's a reason for us to specifically be told death is going to ride out. I might speculate that this horseman is in charge of the deaths because of the other 4 horsemen. So they'll be riding together. And where they go, this guy will be in charge of death. That would be wrong. Very wrong. Because number one, we are not told that they ride out at the same time. The Lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyes will open each seal, one after another in sequence. First, second, third, fourth. Even the creatures that call them out are first creature, second creature, third creature, fourth creature in connection with Revelation chapter 4. Clearly. So they are sequential. This 4th horseman is riding out after the first 3. The third rides out after the first 2, and the second rides out after the first 1. There will be a sequence in history that we will observe to come if we're around. Okay? This death is not going to be a result of a united 4 horsemen effect. The quarter of the population is going to die. It's not going to be the people who die when the conquest happens. Even though it's going to be a diplomatic conquest, we know that these things can't happen without some people dying. It's definitely not going to be the death of the red horse when strife and warfare take place. It's not going to be death as a result of the shortages and famine that will cause some people to die. It's not. It's a different death. While those 3 horsemen will show some death, especially the red horse, this pale one is not the same deaths as those. This will be additional death as a result of the chaos that takes over the world. This death will be carefully extracted, though, from the population of the world by God's hand. The others, the first three horsemen, will cause random deaths, widespread. This fourth horseman will be specific, chosen people, but not in a good way like we are the chosen who have been chosen away to be taken away from the path of sin. Not like that. He's going to kill with a sword, with famine, pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. Nothing is coincidental. So when I do the summary, we'll see that the number 4 plays in. Ezekiel 14:21. Nice thing here. 21. For thus says the Lord God, how much more when I send upon Jerusalem my 4 disastrous acts of judgment, sword, famine, wild beasts, and pestilence, to cut off from it man and beast. You recognize those same 4? Sword, famine, wild beast, pestilence. Revelation 6, sword, famine, pestilence, wild beasts. The only difference is the last 2 are interchanged. But the death that this 4th horseman is bringing, this one is not sequential. We don't see here clearly that it'll be sword and then famine and then peace and then wild beasts. It won't be like that. It'll be all at once. We can read the language and see it clearly. The context of the verse in Ezekiel will tell us something more about it. So let's check Ezekiel's context. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically, certain elders of Israel came to me, Ezekiel. What's happening here is these elders went to him to get a good word. I've often seen people like, Pastor, give us a good word. Or people walk around like, I'd like to check this pastor or that program because I love to get a good word. What they want is encouragement and feel-good crap. If the Bible encourages you, that's beautiful. But they don't want the Bible to encourage them. They want pieces of the Bible to encourage them. They want select scriptures, so they want cherry-picked verses to make them feel good. False teachers is what they are seeking. 2 Timothy 4:3, right? These elders who came to Ezekiel were seeking a good word, but they got abusive prophecy. What Ezekiel told them after was awful. And that was because they were idolatrous. The Greek word that's translated here for pestilence, when we see, Ezekiel here, 14:21, right, pestilence. And the same pestilence in 6:8, pestilence. Greek translation for this in the New Testament, it's Greek. In the Greek translation for pestilence, the word is thanatos. We met thanatos before, didn't we? And I told you all it'll come back. Check it out. Oh, that's the wrong page. 6:8. We met thanatos here, and it meant death. Later in the same verse, to kill with famine, plague, beasts of the earth, sword, famine, plague, beasts of the earth. This word is thanatos as well. Observe this sign. This letter is called theta. Observe it up here. It looks different. Check it out. You should see it looks different. This one here, they do look a little bit different. This one is a fatter O, and the middle piece don't touch both ends. This one is a thinner O, and the middle piece touches both ends. This is common TH. This is capital TH here. So in the original languages, it's clear. The word means death, spiritual or physical. In this verse, it specifically means physical, death of the body. in this case here, this listing of how the fourth horseman will kill, he's not going to kill with sword, famine, death, and beasts of the earth. Kill means death anyways. It's not being redundant. It's not, how we say repetition for emphasis. It's not doing repetition for emphasis. It's listing how people will die. So, the Bible is not redundant. The use here and the concordance show that people will die. Thanatos here, if you get to the root, thanatos. People will die here. Their bodies will just fail. That could mean sickness, pestilence, but it doesn't necessarily mean sickness alone. Their bodies will fail, though. You see, no term for sickness was used specifically here, so it may mean that people just drop dead. Parts might fail, but it wouldn't be a sickness. You just drop dead. Kind of like how, not the same, but similar to how Corona just made some people just die because they had underlying conditions. Except in this case of Thanatos, people will just die. Death is not restricted in how he is going to harvest his quota of souls. Again, I must say that death here is not an actual person, not an angel, not the devil. Death is just a concept whose effects will be felt on the earth. I'm pointing out the common TH and capital TH to show in this single verse, the same word is effectively used. One to represent a symbolic rider, given a name death, capital letter first, name, and one to symbolically represent literal death, because people are going to die. The last piece with wild beasts causing death has been speculated by scholars to be due to wild beasts proliferating. They will grow in larger numbers and take back habitats because there'll be fewer people. With the first three plagues, with the first three judgments, sorry, not plagues, first three judgments, people will die, animals might take back habitats. But I'm not going to dispute with that too much. It's possible, but it's also possible that animals will have less fear of man because of chaos on the earth at that time, and because God will remove even the little bit of fear they have of man. They'll become more bold. That's a possibility. That's not a guarantee. It's not in the word. That's just a possibility, me speculating. You see, why I don't think it might be animals taking over the world or looking like they'll come back is many animals right now are facing extinction. So it's unlikely they'll be able to rebuild numbers so quickly that they'll clash with people for territory. Especially with things like wars and stuff going on, because with the wars, the bombs drop in, animals going to die too, right? So how the animals will do it, if it will be they come back in numbers, they get more bold, or just whatever is there will just start killing more. Who knows? They will kill more. The word doesn't say those parts, so we don't need to, stress over those parts. Only worry about only focus, not worry. Only focus on what the word tells us. Outside of that, it's speculation. We don't need to speculate too much, okay? Our focus here is that animal attacks will happen. Human death will result, and it will contribute towards the 25% of dead people out of the human population. Sword, famine. Thanks, Joshua. Sword, famine. I forgot. Plague. Sword, famine, plague here. Beasts of the earth. I'm almost done. I have the conclusion, and it's short. No mention here. I need to note before I conclude. There's no mention of thunder, lightning, floods, earthquakes. So death that will occur here will not be due to natural disasters. This death, again, is calculating and deliberate and a result of men's foolishness. Just like for Ezekiel, where the prophecy they got was abusive, because of the idolatry. Even the elders that came to Ezekiel were idolatrous. Men will die for idolatry. There'll be consequences of disobedience of the highest order because men in this time, when this is going to happen, men would be following Babylon, the mother of harlots. Men would be following Babylon and indulging in the adultery of Babylon. And adultery here in prophecy is idolatry, serving somebody who is not our God. It's seen as being similar to cheating on your spouse. Our conclusion, we're done. Fourth rider and the fourth horse and rider are special. They will bring sweeping death. The rider spreads across the earth, right? Just like the first, second, and third, this rider will spread across the earth. Sweeping death will take the world. Approximately 1 in 4 people will die due to violence, hunger, animal attack, and their physical end. The fact that this rider has no tool is to show that he's an administrator of death. His work will be carried out by his 4 aforementioned agents, which would be violence, hunger, animal attack, physical end. These deaths are not the same deaths from the conquest, the chaos, the strife, the war, the famine of the first 3 seals. Jesus will open the 3 seals and there will be some death, but not this one. Only when he opens the 4th seal, this death is going to happen. These deaths will follow those first 3 seals closely, and the number to be killed off, like we said, is about 25% of the humans at that time. The first 3 seals are therefore not likely to kill as many. They'll kill a lot of people, but not a quarter of the population. And this is real. The world has so many people. 1 million people is not even like, 10%. 1 million people is 10% of 10 million people. 1 million people is 1% of 100 million people. We have more than 1 billion people on the earth. It's probably like 3 or 4 billion if I'm right. We could check that. Oh, 8 billion, son of a gun. Remember when we did a check and there was a counter? I have a site with a counter, I think for a Bible study of last month or month before. So millions of people dying doesn't mean it's even a quarter. If this happens now, 2 billion people will die. This is real, y'all. The first 3 will not kill close to that, but there'll be millions dying still. Because 2 billion people is way more than 1 million people. There is going to be some kind of distinction of the 25% that's going to be killed from the ones who are left alone. And a reminder, this has nothing to do with the bowls of wrath, which are way to come still. Because it's the seals, then the trumpets, then the bowls. So the first bowl of wrath that hits and brings sickness onto the sore, onto those who are all right. Good night, Miss Kimberly. Miss Kimberly has to leave. Good night, Miss Kimberly. The first bowl that brings the sore upon the ones who have the mark of the beast. That has nothing to do with this here. At this point, the mark of the beast may not even be a thing. The Antichrist might be around, well known, but the mark of the beast may not be a thing as yet. Okay? Commentators' views, some have very unusual interpretations of the quarter of the world reference. Pulpit thinks these are not necessarily consecutive 1, 2, 3 events. They may be concurrent, meaning happening at the same time. I do not agree with that, of course. Matthew Henry says the timing cannot be ascertained. Barnes said a quarter refers to a quarter of the Roman Empire, not a quarter of the world. Because a lot of these scholars were fixated on the Roman Empire and Roman Catholic Church. Barnes believed the seals would have been opened back in the Roman Empire days because there was a lot of death then. He's not the only one. There are a lot of commentators who believe these seals were opened already. It's clear that they're not, because the diplomatic conquest of the white horse has not happened. The inflation of the third horse has not happened. While, yes, we see a lot of what looks like the red horse going on, the red horse hasn't come yet. So imagine the strife to come when that red horse rides across the world. Something serious for us to consider. This takes us to the end of the fourth horseman's study. I was able to complete it in one night. I do thank you all for being here for this. Let me just stop the recording. So to whoever is watching this on YouTube or Facebook, thank you very much for being part of this. I'll take questions and comments. You could type them, questions or comments in the comments on the post that you look at. Please send them if you want to discuss it. We can, as long as you have sense and stuff. I have to put that in because some people come here and just try to argue for trying to sound smart sake, and I don't deal with crap like that. So if you want to fill your ego by discussing this to sound academic and crap, that's not me. Discuss it with somebody else who cares about that. I'm discussing it because this is what the Word of God says. It's what my research says. I hope to put some of these again up on the internet so y'all can check these out too. So have a good night. Goodbye. God bless you.